The night the cul-de-sac smelled like citrus cleaner and wet chalk, Nathan decided I was a joke. He showcased me between artisanal olives and a decanter nobody actually liked. The neighbors leaned in the way people do when they sense a story coming that isn't about them. I smiled like a showroom lamp and counted the seconds. There's a rhythm to humiliation in this zip code. Set, spike, laughter. I know rhythm. I design it for a living. And I was about to redesign his. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nathan loved to perform. Give him an audience, a drink, and someone he could gently embarrass, and he'd beam brighter than the Edison bulbs dangling above our reclaimed oak table. His agency had just landed a mid-tier sportswear client, and he'd invited his core team for dinner. Translation: the people who laughed at his jokes loud enough to keep him confident. There was Dylan, tall and smug, the account executive who called me Laurie as if we'd grown up together. There was Claire, my ex-friend turned Nathan's unofficial cheerleader. And then there was Aunt Beverly, perching like a parrot at the corner, ready to enforce social decorum while ignoring her own glass of Pinot refills. The table was perfect. Our best plates, flickering candles, and the faint scent of rosemary chicken I'd cooked, even though Nathan had told everyone he ordered it from our chef friend downtown. He winked when he said it, as if we were sharing a cute secret. Over dinner, one of his friends asked how we met. My husband grinned. She kept messaging me, couldn't take a hint. Laughter. Then, she was obsessed, honestly. Now she trails me like a puppy. I just smiled, drained my glass, and knew he'd never mock me again. I felt something settle behind my ribs. Not rage exactly, but something colder and steadier. I raised my glass slightly and said, "You'll regret saying that." The table froze for a second, then laughter erupted again, because no one ever believes the quiet lines matter. I excused myself under the pretense of checking dessert and walked into the kitchen, where the tile felt steadier under my heels than the hardwood out there. The sink window looked out onto identical lawns lined with perfect hedges. Somewhere down the block, sprinklers ticked like slow applause. In our neighborhood, everything was about appearances. Who could pretend best? I'd been pretending for years that Nathan's jokes didn't bother me, that his backhanded compliments were endearing, that his smirks during PTA mixers weren't meant to remind me of how small I looked next to him. I used to think sarcasm was armor. Lately, it felt like camouflage. "Laurie," Dylan's voice broke into my thoughts. He leaned on the door frame, tie loose, confidence sharp enough to cut reflection. "Don't take him too seriously. He's Nathan." "Yeah," I said lightly. "He sure is." He chuckled, lingering. His eyes roamed around the kitchen like he owned it. "You've got a good thing here. Nice house, good reputation, the whole deal. Not everyone can handle being married to a showman." "Good thing I'm in design," I replied, moving past him. "I know how to handle color and noise." When he left, I looked toward the living room. Nathan was laughing with Claire, gesturing animatedly as he told another story, probably about me forgetting a parking ticket or dropping my phone in a pool 3 summers ago. He loved those harmless humiliation anecdotes. They made him human, he said, relatable. I waited until the plates were cleared, and the guests had drifted toward the porch for dessert wine before I went to his office. The door was cracked open. His laptop glowed faintly on the desk, open to a shared drive window. My shared drive window. The folder structure was unmistakable, my color-coded system from the early years, when I helped him organize client materials before his agency took off. I recognized the naming conventions, the exact shorthand I'd invented. I hadn't logged in for months, but clearly my framework had outlived my involvement. On the screen, he was editing a campaign proposal. The file properties flashed briefly when he clicked Save. The author name read Lauren P. My name, my credentials, Still active. He hadn't even bothered to remove me. I closed the laptop gently. That was the moment the first domino tilted. When I returned, laughter had shifted to gossip, Aunt Beverly's favorite sport. She was recounting how the new family on the corner had planted the wrong species of tree, not permitted under HOA landscaping codes, as she reminded everyone. She smiled at me, benevolent and sharp. "Lauren, dear, you haven't been to the meetings lately. You should come by. So many new faces." "Oh, I've been meaning to," I said. "I do love a good set of rules." That earned another polite laugh. Beverly preened, assuming it was flattery. It wasn't. By the time everyone left, the house smelled like wine and synthetic citrus. Nathan was humming as he stacked dishes into the sink. "Good night, huh?" he said, not looking at me. "You were quiet tonight. People will think I offended you." "Wouldn't want that," I said, leaning against the counter. He smirked. "You can't take a joke sometimes." "Maybe your jokes need better timing." He waved me off. "Oh, don't start. Everyone had fun. You're too sensitive about the small stuff." "Right," I murmured. "The small stuff." He didn't notice I was watching him through the reflection of the kitchen window, studying how comfortable he looked in his confidence. I wondered if he'd always been this way, and I'd just been too distracted by love, or habit, to see it. When he finally went upstairs, I sat in his office again. The glow of the monitor painted the room in sterile light. I opened the shared drive, scrolling through folders labeled client reports, vendor statements, creative approvals. I remembered designing the template for these, each folder used to represent a late night, coffee stains, and Nathan pacing behind me dictating edits. Now they represented something else, a roadmap. I noticed duplication, 2 versions of the same invoice, identical except for the numbers, inflated hours, double-billed vendors, sloppy but intentional. I didn't need to be an accountant to see it. I was a designer. Patterns were my specialty. A quieter person might have backed away then. Closed the laptop. Pretended ignorance. But humiliation has a half-life. It decays slowly and releases something potent. I didn't copy anything. Not yet. I wasn't reckless. Instead, I jotted mental notes, file paths, dates, who approved what. It wasn't about vengeance yet. It was about accuracy. At 2 a.m, Nathan's phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it. A notification preview glowed briefly. "Dylan, she'll calm down." I smiled into the dark. Calm wasn't the problem. Focus was. The next morning, Nathan acted like nothing happened. He whistled in the shower, kissed my cheek on his way out, and said, "Try to relax today. Maybe go for a walk. You get tense." "I'll try," I said. After he left, I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and logged into the same drive with my still active credentials. The login accepted instantly. No warnings, no security flags. Like I'd never left. Familiar names appeared, client folders, vendor lists, invoice scans. My old organizational bones were still there, wrapped now in Nathan's careless vanity. He hadn't even changed the background color I'd chosen. I clicked through until I found what I needed. 3 consecutive campaigns, billed to different clients, but using the same creative assets. I checked timestamps. The same approval date appeared across all 3. Dylan's signature block gleamed like a stamp of arrogance. It was almost elegant in a stupid way. I didn't download anything. I simply printed 1 sample page and slipped it into my sketchbook, the one labeled Layout Ideas. If Nathan ever glanced at it, he'd see nothing but thumbnails and typography notes. By noon, I'd also learned that Beverly had called Claire. I overheard it on speakerphone because Claire is the type who forgets to hang up before gossiping. "Poor thing," Beverly said. "She chased Nathan for months before he finally said yes. I told her she should have had more pride." I stood in my studio, marker poised above a design board, and laughed softly. That was the version now making rounds. I'd been desperate, persistent, unbalanced. It was always easier to believe a woman begged her way into a marriage than to imagine she'd been a partner who built something. Fine. Let them tell that story. I'd tell another. That evening, when Nathan came home, I greeted him with a smile. I asked about his day, offered dinner, even poured him wine. He relaxed immediately, predictable as a screensaver. He talked about Dylan's great energy, about potential investors, about the firm's expansion. I nodded in all the right places. Then, casually, I said, "You should clean up your cloud folders. They're a little messy. I saw duplicates when I helped with the quarterly archive." His fork froze for a second. "You were in the drive?" "My name's still on the admin list," I said mildly. "I got a notification." He tried to sound unconcerned. "Oh, yeah, you can remove yourself if you want. No need to clutter your inbox." "I like clutter," I said. "Gives life character." He laughed uncertainly, and I smiled. Later that night, he fell asleep quickly. People who believe they're safe always do. I stayed awake, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the sprinkler cycle outside. The neighborhood was peaceful in a way that felt false, like a stage set after the actors have gone home. Somewhere, a phone vibrated. Dylan again. Maybe. Or Beverly, texting congratulations about another successful dinner. The small hum of secrets. I turned toward Nathan and studied the way his face softened in rest. There was a time when that look would have melted me. Now it reminded me of a logo, polished, shallow, designed for effect. He'd mocked me for being too emotional, for caring too much about color, texture, detail. He didn't realize those same instincts would make me precise in dismantling him. I wasn't impulsive. I was patient. And patience, when sharpened by purpose, becomes something surgical. The next morning, I took a walk through the neighborhood. Every house looked identical. Perfect lawns, curated wreaths, the illusion of control. Beverly waved from her porch, pretending not to be curious about why I was up early. I waved back. At the park, I sat on a bench and pulled out my sketchbook. Between thumbnails of packaging concepts, the printout peeked like a hidden tooth. I slipped it deeper in, behind a page of gradient tests. Children played on the swings. Someone's dog barked. Somewhere, sprinklers hissed to life. Everything normal. Everything neat. That's the thing about perfect neighborhoods. They run on quiet assumptions. People believe gossip is power. They forget silence is strategy. When I got home, Nathan's car was still gone, but his computer bag lay on the counter. I flipped it open. Inside was his planner, open to next week's calendar. One entry caught my eye. Investor dinner, Thursday. Venue, Beverly's Country Club. I could almost hear the laughter already. The polished jokes, the familiar rhythm of set, spike, laughter. Only this time, I'd be ready. As I closed the planner, I noticed a tiny smear of sauce on its corner. Barbecue, maybe. Not from our kitchen. From one of his client lunches, probably. The kind he never mentioned but always bragged about through receipts. I wiped it clean with a paper towel. No trace left. By evening, I'd already drawn up a checklist. Which files needed reviewing, which names to remember, which allies to keep close. I wasn't out for chaos. I was out for correction. When Nathan came home, he looked at me like everything was fine, and for a moment, I let him believe it. He kissed my temple absently, murmuring something about another long day ahead. I smiled. "Don't be late Thursday. Beverly likes punctuality." He laughed. "You really keep track, huh?" "I'm good at patterns," I said. That night, as the neighborhood lights blinked out one by one, I sat by the window with my sketchbook on my lap. The house felt still, obedient, unaware that its walls were about to hold a different kind of story. I opened the book, looked at the hidden page again, and traced the corner with my thumb. The faint ink numbers, his numbers, gleamed under the lamplight. Outside, sprinklers started their steady rhythm again. I matched their beat, tapping my pen softly against the paper, designing in my head not a logo, not a brand, but a reckoning. And when the rhythm clicked just right, I smiled. He thought he understood timing. He had no idea. By Tuesday morning, the house smelled like brewed coffee and quiet calculation. Nathan had already left for his morning meeting. Something about client onboarding and new partnerships. Translation, showing off. He'd kissed my cheek on the way out as though nothing had changed. Maybe for him, nothing had. For me, everything had edges now. I opened my laptop on the kitchen counter. The sun came in sharp through the blinds, slicing across the marble in neat bars. My reflection in the screen looked too calm to be plotting anything. I typed the old company link, our old company, technically, and my cursor blinked in the login box like it was daring me. The password was still the same. It worked on the first try. The dashboard loaded, familiar and sterile. I half expected confetti to burst out and say, "Welcome back, Lauren." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built this structure, this whole tidy system of folders and naming conventions, color-coded down to the pixel. Nathan used to say my organization saved him. Now it might undo him. I scrolled through. Client campaigns, vendor files, Q1 reports. Then the private folder that only executives were supposed to access. Strategic approvals. My access shouldn't have worked there either, but the permissions hadn't been updated since the year I built them. I could almost hear Nathan's voice saying, "I'll get to that later." He never did. Inside the folder, dozens of documents, invoices, timelines, contracts. Some looked familiar, others had names I didn't recognize. I opened one at random, Laramie Activewear Final Report. The metadata box appeared automatically, just as I'd coded it years ago. Author, last modified, approval timestamp. The author read Dylan H. The timestamp overlapped with another project in a completely different folder. Dylan had supposedly approved 2 campaigns on the same afternoon, one in Los Angeles, one in Denver. Interesting trick, unless he'd mastered teleportation. I cross-referenced with the public posts. The agency's social media bragged about simultaneous launches that week. The irony was rich. They'd inflated their scope by duplicating creative assets, pretending each was an independent campaign. Every pixel screamed copy-paste. I took a screenshot and printed it, not to use yet, just to hold the proof in my hands. There's a strange power in physical paper. It doesn't lie the way words can. Halfway through the next folder, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Dinner Thursday?" Beverly says Nathan's presenting something big. Of course he was. "The investor dinner," I typed back. "Wouldn't miss it." Then muted her. I spent another hour tracing digital fingerprints. Nathan's were everywhere. Edits, signatures, approval stamps. He was confident enough to sign off using both his name and mine. Sometimes he even swapped them. Lauren P., creative consultant. I hadn't been a consultant for his agency in over 2 years. Apparently, my ghost still was. By noon, I closed the laptop. Too much truth at once can blur. I needed distance. The air outside was warm, the kind that sticks politely to your skin. Our street glimmered under early sun. I walked slowly, waving to the mail carrier, pretending to be another woman with errands instead of evidence. When I passed Claire's house, I saw her on the porch in gym clothes, holding a green smoothie like a trophy. "Lauren," she called, "you're glowing." "Thanks. Must be the chlorophyll," I said. She laughed. "Beverly says Nathan's firm might be expanding. You must be thrilled." I smiled, the polite kind. Thrilled is one word for it. Claire squinted, maybe sensing something beneath my tone, but too polite, or too afraid, to ask. Around here, curiosity was both the lifeblood and the trap of every friendship. Back home, I brewed fresh coffee and opened my sketchbook. Between the design thumbnails was the printed invoice I'd slipped inside last night. I added a sticky note beside it. Check cross-client dates. My handwriting looked steady. Too steady. That afternoon, Nathan called. "Hey, Law, can you check the home router? The Wi-Fi was weird at the office. Wonder if the backup system synced wrong." "Sure," I said. "You want me to look at the cloud too?" A pause. No, that's fine. Just the router." "Okay." I smiled to myself. "Have fun at your meeting." When we hung up, I laughed quietly. He suspected something, maybe. Or maybe he just sensed the shift, the way animals sense weather changes before the storm arrives. Around 3, I got an email from a name I didn't recognize, anonymous. "Check your shared folder, video, MP4. At first, I thought it was spam. But the sender's address wasn't random. It was a masked relay service, one Nathan's firm occasionally used for client data transfers. I clicked. The video was grainy but clear enough. Nathan and Dylan sat in the agency's break room, late at night, half-empty glasses on the table. Nathan's voice carried, cocky and careless. "She's snooping again," he said. Dylan laughed. "She won't find anything." Nathan shrugged. "If she does, I'll charm my way out. I always do." "Cool her off before Thursday," Dylan said. "We need her calm." The camera angle shifted slightly as if whoever filmed it moved closer. The last frame caught Nathan's smirk, confident, arrogant, unshakable. My pulse stayed even. The anger wasn't loud, it was methodical. I played it twice, noting the background, the break room's hanging light fixture, the branded mugs, the clock showing 10:42. Then I noticed something smaller. On the counter behind them, reflected faintly in the steel coffee pot, was a woman's silhouette. Shoulder-length hair, stiff posture. It looked like Aunt Beverly. I paused the frame, zoomed in. Not crystal clear, but close enough to make my chest tighten, not from shock, but recognition. Beverly's habit of wearing pearls, even at night, had betrayed her. The faint gleam was unmistakable. So Beverly filmed them. Why? There was only one logical reason. She knew about the irregularities and was positioning herself as the gatekeeper of the secret. In this suburb, information wasn't power. It was currency. I copied the video to an encrypted drive and labeled it Textures. If Nathan ever asked, I'd say it was for a design project. At 4, I went for another walk. The sidewalks were full of joggers, gardeners, and teenagers, pretending to care about lawn care for extra allowance. Beverly was outside trimming her hydrangeas, looking every bit the benevolent queen of the cul-de-sac. "Lauren," she called, waving her pruning shears. "You look radiant. Must be the weather." "It's lovely," I said. "Perfect for growth." She beamed. "Thursday's dinner will be splendid. Nathan has such charisma when he presents. You must be proud." "Oh, always," I said, then added with a smile, "I do love a good show." Something flickered behind her expression, maybe a hint of caution. She adjusted her pearls, that small nervous tick she tried to hide. When I got home, I opened my notes again. The pattern was shaping up. Duplicate invoices, repeated signatures, video proof of complicity, and an unseen observer who might try to use it for her own benefit. I didn't trust Beverly. She'd taught me years ago that kindness in this neighborhood came with an invoice. But if she wanted to play games, I could design the board. At 6, Nathan came home. He tossed his jacket on the couch, loosened his tie, and said, "Crazy day. You wouldn't believe how much I had to smooth over." "I might," I said. He chuckled, pouring himself a drink. "You know, Law, you really should come Thursday. Investors love seeing supportive spouses. Makes everything look stable." "Stable," I repeated. "That's what we are, huh?" He didn't notice the edge in my voice. "Exactly. Picture perfect." I studied him for a moment. His polished hair, the self-satisfied grin, the way he used charm like insurance. There was a strange comfort in realizing he was predictable. Predictability is a designer's dream. It lets you plan composition around what you know will happen. After dinner, he spent an hour in his office rehearsing slides. I stayed in the living room pretending to read. The faint sound of his voice through the door, synergy, growth, brand visibility, made me want to laugh. He spoke like an ad written by committee. When he finally came out, I said, "Do you ever worry about overpromising?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "In your presentations, big claims can bite later." He smirked. "You're overthinking again." "Probably," I said. "It's what designers do." That night, I dreamed of folders opening like dominoes. One click, then another, until everything fell neatly into place. The next day, I met with a freelance client downtown. On my lunch break, I stopped by the cafe where Nathan's agency sometimes held meetings. The barista recognized me. "You're Nathan's wife, right? He was here this morning with the tall guy, Dylan." "Oh?" I asked lightly. "Yeah, they were talking about some presentation adjustment." He looked stressed, said something about keeping things off the record. I smiled, left a tip, and walked out into the sun. The city buzzed around me, but my thoughts were organized, catalogued. If Nathan was worried enough to adjust his pitch, he knew the house of cards was wobbling. Back home, I checked the shared drive again. One of the invoice files I'd seen before was missing, deleted, not smart enough to realize deleted files leave trails. I opened the recent edits log, still enabled under my permissions. The deletion timestamp matched exactly when he'd been at the cafe. I restored the file, saved a copy to my own cloud, and renamed it Color Study. By evening, I had a full grid on my wall, printed screenshots, sticky notes, timelines. From afar, it looked like an art project, geometric, balanced. Up close, it was the anatomy of deception. At 7, Beverly called. "Lauren, dear, you'll be at the dinner Thursday, won't you? It's going to be quite the event. Nathan asked for the main table." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "You know how much I love a good presentation." "Perfect. Wear that red dress from the charity gala. It makes you look powerful." I smiled. "You remember everything." When we hung up, I stared at the phone for a moment. Beverly was aligning pieces, probably thinking she was the puppeteer. She'd learned soon enough that designers control layout. That night, as Nathan showered, I sat at his desk again. His phone lay face down, charging. I wasn't going to snoop, but a message preview glowed across the screen. "Dylan. Meeting rescheduled. Keep her calm." I locked eyes with my reflection in the dark monitor and whispered, "I'm perfectly calm." The next morning, I woke early, restless but focused. The house creaked softly, the way old wood does when it adjusts to temperature changes. Nathan left before sunrise, muttering something about needing extra prep time. I made toast, fed the neighbor's cat through the fence, and sat by the window. Across the street, Beverly loaded bags into her car, folders most likely, labeled neatly as if her life were one long board meeting. At 9, an email arrived from an investor contact I vaguely remembered from Nathan's earlier years, a man named Robert Lang. Subject line, clarification request. He wrote, "Lauren, I found your name on the original branding proposals for Pierce & Co. Would you be available for a brief conversation about design ownership before Thursday's review?" I almost laughed. The universe occasionally knows how to time a punchline. I replied, "Of course." Happy to clarify. For the next hour, I outlined a factual, careful statement. Yes, I had created the brand templates. Yes, I'd designed the original client tracking sheets. Yes, my access was still technically active, though I hadn't contributed recently. No accusations, just truth wrapped neatly in professionalism. By noon, Robert replied, "Appreciate the transparency. It's helpful context." Helpful. Such a neutral word. I liked it. Nathan texted later, "All good at home?" I answered, "Perfectly organized." That evening, the air smelled faintly of chlorine from someone's backyard pool. I sat outside with my sketchbook, adding lines, rearranging sticky notes. Each movement was deliberate. The sky turned a slow peach, the kind of color that makes everything feel momentarily gentle. Then a car slowed near my driveway. Dylan's black sedan. He didn't stop, just rolled past slowly, eyes catching mine through the window before turning the corner. The message was clear. We're watching. I closed the sketchbook, smiling faintly. Watching was fine. Watching meant waiting, and waiting was my art form. Inside, I placed the encrypted drive in my desk drawer beside a small note labeled Thursday. It wasn't a threat, just a reminder of symmetry, cause and effect. Before bed, Nathan came up behind me as I brushed my hair. "You're quiet lately," he said softly. "Everything okay?" "Just thinking," I said. He smiled at our reflection in the mirror. "That's what I love about you, always planning something." He had no idea how right he was. When he turned off the light, I lay awake, listening to the sprinkler rhythm outside. The house felt like it was breathing, soft, shallow, expectant. Somewhere in the quiet, I felt the click of alignment. Everything was almost in place. Thursday would be interesting, and when the curtain lifted, I'd make sure the lighting was perfect. By Wednesday morning, the air in Wisteria Grove had the kind of nervous brightness that only appeared before big community events. Lawns were newly trimmed, driveways power-washed, and even Beverly's porch flags had been ironed. The neighborhood was preparing for Thursday's investor dinner, the way other towns prepared for elections. Same tension, same gossip, disguised as civic duty. I walked to the cafe down the hill, pretending to need caffeine, but really I just wanted to listen. In suburbs like ours, truth doesn't live in files. It lives in conversations over lattes. Inside, the espresso machine hissed like a rumor being born. Claire sat at a corner table, voice lowered but animated. Opposite her was Jennifer, the PTA's unofficial publicist. The moment they saw me, their smiles snapped into place like shutters. "Lauren, we were just talking about you," Claire said. I sat down without asking. "That's my favorite topic." Jennifer gave a polite laugh, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "We heard Nathan's presenting something huge tomorrow. The firm's really thriving." "Oh, it's impressive," I said. "He's got everyone believing the numbers." Claire blinked. "Believing?" I took a sip of my coffee. You know how it is. Marketing's part theatre, part arithmetic. Sometimes the audience doesn't notice when the math dances. Jennifer frowned slightly, probably calculating how to repeat that later without sounding like she was gossiping. I smiled sweetly. "Anyway, it'll be an entertaining night. Beverly's hosting, right? She never misses a chance to decorate with her ego." Claire tried not to choke on her drink. "Lauren!" "Oh, relax," I said. "You know she loves the attention. I'm just giving her credit for commitment." They laughed, uncertain whether I was joking. I wasn't. After they left, I lingered a moment, pretending to scroll my phone. Their conversation drifted from me to Nathan, and then to Dylan. Something about how loyal he seemed, how inseparable they'd been lately. Perfect. Let them build the myth for me. It's easier to dismantle a public image when everyone believes it's indestructible. Back home, I organized the new materials. Duplicate invoices, the deleted file restored, and the anonymous video showing Nathan and Dylan talking about cooling me off. The reflection of Beverly's pearls still glimmered faintly in the corner. I printed a frame and pinned it to my corkboard with the caption, "All the world's a stage." At noon, Beverly called. "Lauren, dear, would you mind helping with table placements for tomorrow? I want it to look natural, but also balanced." "Of course," I said. "I love symmetry." When I arrived at her house, she already had the seating chart laid out on her dining table. It looked less like a dinner and more like a power map. Nathan and Dylan sat center, Beverly beside the lead investor, Robert Lang. I was on the periphery, decorative, not essential. I studied the layout. "You should switch seats 5 and 7. She frowned. "Why?" "Lighting," I said smoothly. "If Robert's at 7, the chandelier reflection will hit him directly. Distracting. Move Nathan there instead. It'll make him look brighter." Beverly smiled, satisfied with the logic. not realizing I'd just positioned Nathan directly under the room's main camera fixture. The same system she used to record her HOA meetings. The same one she probably used to film that video. As I left, she patted my arm. "You're such a clever girl, Lauren. You always notice details." "That's my job," I said. Outside, the air felt heavy, sweet with jasmine and deceit. I walked home slowly, letting the rhythm of my steps organize my thoughts. Tomorrow's dinner wasn't just a show, it was a set piece. Every angle mattered. That evening, I called Ava Patel, the investor liaison who'd emailed earlier in the week. We met at a downtown cafe, crowded enough to muffle conversations. She looked younger than I expected. Late 20s, sharp eyes behind subtle glasses. "I appreciate you meeting me," she said. "I just wanted to confirm a few things before the investor review." "Of course," I said, handing her a folder. "Here are copies of the original design templates and asset logs. You'll see the timestamps. They match the invoices Nathan's firm sent later, but the files were reused." She flipped through the pages, her brow tightening. "You're saying the same creative work was billed multiple times?" "I'm not saying anything," I said calmly. "I'm showing you the metadata. It speaks clearly." Ava nodded slowly, closing the folder. "Understood. If this comes up tomorrow, I may ask a clarifying question. Nothing confrontational, just procedural." "That's fine," I said. "Transparency's good for business." When we stood to leave, she hesitated. "Lauren, just for context, why tell me this now?" I smiled. "Because I'm a designer. I believe in accurate representation." Back home, twilight softened the street into pastel shadows. Dylan's car sat outside Nathan's office again, engine idling. Through the window, I could see them talking. Nathan gesturing wildly. Dylan leaning back, smirking. I turned on my porch light and stepped outside with a watering can, pretending to tend the plants. My presence made Dylan glance over. He raised his cup mockingly, then drove off. Nathan came out a few minutes later. "He was just dropping off documents," he said quickly, before I could ask. "Sure," I said. "Hope the documents appreciate the overtime." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said lightly. "Just a designer appreciating good layout. You two spend a lot of time aligning things." He didn't get it, of course. Sarcasm always sailed right over his head, unless it was his own. That night, I lay awake listening to the steady hum of the ceiling fan. Tomorrow the performance would begin, and every player already knew their lines. Except they didn't know I'd rewritten the script. By morning, the neighborhood buzzed with anticipation. Cars lined driveways, catering vans blocked cul-de-sacs, and Beverly's house glowed like a suburban Versailles. I could hear her from 2 houses away, barking instructions about centerpieces and lighting angles. Around 10, Claire texted, "Heard Beverly invited that young investor herself. Think she's matchmaking." I smiled. She's always building something. Tables, schemes, reputations. Claire replied with a laughing emoji, unaware of the precision behind my words. By noon, I'd rehearsed my own small role. I didn't need speeches or confrontations. My revenge was structural, like architecture. You don't need to scream when the foundation shifts under someone's feet. That afternoon, I visited the HOA meeting hall. Beverly was overseeing volunteers, setting up banners for next week's charity event. Perfect timing. "Lauren, you're early," she said. "I like to stay ahead," I replied. "By the way, I noticed the HOA storage list still includes the old signage vendor. Thought you replaced them." Her eyes darted slightly. Yes, well, paperwork takes time." "Of course," I said innocently. "Just curious because their invoices overlap with your landscaping supplier." "Odd coincidence." She stiffened. "I'll look into it." "I'm sure you will." I left her standing there, smiling like a statue. It wasn't about accusing her. It was about planting a seed. By the time tomorrow's dinner arrived, she'd be too busy wondering what I knew to interfere. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and sat in the living room. Nathan came home late, distracted and restless. "You look nervous," I said. "Big night tomorrow," he muttered. "Just a lot to coordinate." "Of course." I took a sip. "Coordination's your strength." He looked at me suspiciously. "You're being weird." "Maybe I'm just supportive," I said. He laughed uneasily and kissed my forehead. "Don't start any drama tomorrow, okay? Investors hate tension." "Oh, I'd never ruin a performance," I said. After he went upstairs, I opened my laptop one last time. I uploaded the restored invoice to a public but anonymous drive, time-stamped and untraceable. Then I copied the anonymous video, the one with Beverly's reflection, and queued it beside it, labeled supplementary footage. The link wasn't sent to anyone yet. It didn't need to be. I just wanted it ready. At 10, I stepped outside. The air was still, almost too quiet. Across the street, Beverly's curtains glowed faintly, shadows moving inside. She was probably rehearsing tomorrow's introductions in front of the mirror, smoothing her pearls. A motion sensor flicked on behind me. Dylan's car again, creeping past slowly. This time, it stopped. He rolled down the window and smiled. "Evening, Lauren." I tilted my head. "You like night drives?" "Helps me think." "Dangerous hobby in this neighborhood," I said. "People here mistake curiosity for trouble." He chuckled. "Nathan says you've been tense lately. Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said. "Just reorganizing." He studied me for a second, something calculating in his eyes. "You've always had that look, like you're planning a renovation no one else knows about." "Maybe I am." "Careful, Lauren. Some designs collapse if you pull too many nails." "Only if they're built wrong," I said. He smiled thinly, then drove off, tires whispering against the pavement. I watched the taillights vanish around the corner and let the silence settle again. Inside, I wrote 3 lines in my notebook. Beverly knows more than she should. Nathan thinks he's untouchable. Dylan underestimates subtlety. Tomorrow, they'd all learn the same lesson. Structure always wins over noise. When I turned off the light, I glanced once more at the corkboard, the web of invoices, faces, and timestamps. It looked less like evidence now and more like art. Balanced, intentional. Outside, sprinklers whispered across the lawns, rhythmic as a heartbeat. The neighborhood slept, proud and oblivious, trimmed and polished like a postcard. And I sat in the quiet glow, waiting for the morning that would change everything. By Thursday morning, Wisteria Grove felt like a stage before curtain rise, polished, tense, humming with invisible rehearsals. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon candles and anxiety. Beverly's house, the showpiece of the neighborhood, was already alive with activity. Caterers unloaded trays, strings of lights dangled from her porch like nervous jewelry, and neighbors strolled by pretending not to gawk. Nathan had left early, supposedly to make last-minute adjustments at the office. He kissed my cheek on the way out, called me his lucky charm, and drove off humming. I watched his car until it disappeared around the curve, my coffee cooling in my hand. There's something satisfying about watching a man speed toward his own unraveling. I spent the morning rechecking my notes. Every printout, every metadata timestamp, every overlapping invoice was neatly labeled and tucked into a slim folder marked brand references. If anyone saw it, they'd think it was work. In a way, it was. Just not the kind Nathan imagined. By noon, I decided to visit the charity 5K setup at the park, a thin excuse to stretch my legs and, more importantly, test a small theory. Nathan's agency had designed banners for the event, supposedly funded by one of his newer clients. When I arrived, volunteers were hanging the signs near the starting line. The logo on them made me stop. It wasn't new. It was one of my old mock-ups, an early draft we'd scrapped years ago. I recognized the font combination instantly, right down to the kerning mistake Nathan had teased me for. My initials were still in the corner, faint and nearly erased. "Hey," I said to one of the volunteers, a college kid in a staff t-shirt. Where'd you get these banners printed? He pointed to a folder on the table. Pierce & Co. sent them, said they were custom designs. Of course they did, I murmured. I snapped a photo, framing both the banner and the event's sponsorship sign behind it. Proof. Nathan had reused my old assets again and billed them as fresh creative. A light drizzle began, the kind that makes suburban events seem more cinematic than they deserve. I pulled my jacket closer, ready to leave, when I heard laughter behind me, Dylan's unmistakable voice. He jogged up in branded sneakers, clipboard in hand, pretending to check lists. Lauren, small world. Very small, I said. He looked at the banner and smirked. Nice, right? Clean design, timeless. Almost like it was made years ago, I said. He shrugged. Good design never ages. I smiled, calm and measured. You should tell that to the investors. Something flickered in his expression, brief but sharp. Then he chuckled and patted my shoulder. You always had a good sense of humor. Not always, I said, just recently. As he turned away, his shoe slipped on the wet pavement. He caught himself awkwardly, splashing mud on his pristine shorts. I couldn't help it. I laughed. The volunteers did too. It wasn't cruel, it was perfectly timed karma. When I got home, I printed the photo of the banner and added it to my growing wall of evidence. My layout was complete now. Every thread, every proof. It looked almost beautiful. By evening, I changed into the red dress Beverly had suggested. I pinned my hair neatly, applied lipstick, and slipped the folder into my tote. My reflection in the mirror looked calm, controlled, like a woman walking into a presentation she'd already won. Beverly's driveway was lined with luxury cars and manicured egos. Soft jazz floated from the patio, mingling with the clink of glasses and the scent of truffle appetizers. The house gleamed like a showroom. Lauren, Beverly exclaimed as I entered. Her pearls caught the light. You look divine. Thank you, I said. I do love a well-lit room. Nathan spotted me from across the crowd and waved, his smile a little too wide. There's my girl. Everyone, this is my better half, the creative genius behind my early chaos. Polite laughter. I smiled, letting it wash over me like static. Robert Lang, the investor liaison, was there too. He nodded subtly at me, a silent acknowledgement. Ava Patel stood beside him, clipboard discreetly tucked under her arm. The pieces were all in place. Nathan started his speech after dinner, standing beneath the chandelier I'd so helpfully repositioned him under. His slides flashed across a projection screen. Growth charts, client testimonials, buzzwords layered like frosting. He was good at this, smooth, charming, just self-deprecating enough to seem trustworthy. And none of this, he said grandly, would have been possible without my incredible team, and of course my wife, who built the foundation of this company. Applause. Cameras flashed. He looked at me as if expecting gratitude. I raised my glass and smiled. Happy to contribute. Then Ava cleared her throat. Nathan, could you clarify one point? This quarterly report shows identical creative approvals across 3 separate campaigns. Is that an error in formatting? The room stilled. Nathan's confident grin faltered. Must be a copy-paste glitch. Happens sometimes. Ava nodded politely. Interesting, because the file metadata shows the same timestamp, down to the second, on all 3. That would suggest simultaneous approvals. Murmurs. Beverly shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Nathan laughed weakly. I'm sure our system just uses my old templates, I said softly, cutting through the noise. Those were my files. Recognize them. His head snapped toward me. Lauren. I stood slowly, holding my glass steady. The banners at today's charity run were from my archive too. You remember, don't you? The mock-ups you said were too clean to sell. Gasps rippled through the room like wind through leaves. Beverly's pearls gleamed brighter as she turned her head slightly, assessing the crowd's reaction. She wasn't protecting him. She was calculating. Nathan's voice rose, desperate. This is ridiculous. She's just... Correct, I interrupted. I am correct. Always have been. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the projector. Then Robert Lang closed his folder. Perhaps we should pause the review. Integrity matters. The tension was almost musical. Nathan tried to laugh it off. Honey, let's talk privately. Why? I said evenly. Privacy never suited you. Beverly stood abruptly. Let's all take a moment. Good idea, I said. Maybe you can use it to delete another recording. Her hand froze mid-air. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Phones subtly appeared, screens glowing as guests pretended to check messages but started recording instead. Nathan's face flushed. Dylan hovered near the bar, pale and motionless. I stepped closer to him. How's the car, Dylan? Still proud of those custom plates? He blinked. What? You might want to check them later, I said. They've been rebranded. He frowned in confusion, unaware that his car outside was now wrapped in bright removable vinyl reading, parking courtesy lessons available, complete with a QR code linking to his own careless driving footage. I'd arranged it that afternoon, quietly, legally. Nathan looked between us, realization dawning too late. What did you do? Designed a better ending, I said. Beverly's voice trembled. Lauren, be reasonable. I am, I said, turning toward her. More reasonable than you were when you filmed your nephew for insurance. The crowd turned toward her now. Her lips parted in horror, but no words came out. She understood. The game had shifted, and she was no longer its referee. Nathan lunged for the remote to shut off the projector, but Ava stepped in calmly. Don't bother. We've seen enough. I reached for my glass, took a slow sip, and set it down. You always said my timing was off, I told Nathan. Seems I finally found the right beat. The room buzzed again, voices overlapping, chairs scraping. Beverly sank into her seat, pearls trembling. Dylan slipped out the side door, probably to find his car and his pride waiting for him in neon form. Nathan stood frozen in the center of the chaos, jaw tight, smile gone. He opened his mouth, but I shook my head gently. You should stop while you're still audible. Robert Lang approached him quietly. We'll be in touch about the review. For now, I suggest transparency with your team. When the crowd began to disperse, I walked toward the exit. The night air hit cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of rain. Across the lawn, I could see Dylan's car under the streetlight, vinyl gleaming like a bright confession. Behind me, I heard Nathan call my name, his voice breaking through the chatter. I didn't turn. The sprinklers came on just then, perfect timing, cascading across the grass, catching the lights in glittering arcs. Guests shrieked and scattered, holding their purses and phones. Beverly's perfect tablecloths soaked instantly, her empire wilting under artificial rain. I kept walking, the mist clinging to my dress. From the porch, Nathan shouted something, but his words blurred into the hiss of sprinklers. I didn't need to hear him. I'd already written the ending. At the curb, I paused, looking back once, not at him, but at the house behind him, gleaming and chaotic, its illusions melting. I smiled. For the first time in years, it felt real. Then I turned and walked away, the rhythm of the sprinklers steady behind me, like applause. The morning after the dinner felt too bright for what it was hiding. The air was brittle with gossip, like static waiting to discharge. Wisteria Grove was buzzing, neighbors walking their dogs slower than usual, pretending not to whisper as I passed. They didn't need to ask what happened. News in this neighborhood traveled faster than delivery drones. I poured coffee and sat at the kitchen table, sunlight striping the counter. Nathan hadn't come home. His car was gone, and the absence felt almost ceremonial, like the silence after the last note of a song. I didn't miss him. I was studying the echo he left. By 9, I'd received 3 texts from Claire and 2 from Jennifer. Are you okay? Was that all true? Beverly's losing it. I ignored them. There's no satisfaction in confirming what everyone already suspects. Let them speculate. It gives them purpose. Instead, I opened my laptop. The company's shared drive was still accessible, though I doubted that would last. Nathan might be arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. Sure enough, a warning banner blinked. Access privileges under review. I downloaded what I needed before it vanished. Final proofs, timestamp logs, and a screenshot of Dylan's signature on invoices duplicated across 3 campaigns. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. The message read, "You made quite a scene." Beverly's furious. I smiled. "Good," I typed back. She needed new material. An immediate reply, "Meet me, noon. Exit 14 Overlook." It didn't say who, but I didn't need a signature. Only 2 people in Wisteria Grove loved dramatic rendezvous points, Nathan and Beverly. I arrived early. The Overlook was quiet, perched above the highway with a clear view of traffic threading between manicured trees. Beverly's Lexus pulled up precisely at noon. She stepped out, pearls gleaming, sunglasses enormous. "Lauren," she said, voice strained but composed, "you've created quite the disaster." "Depends on your definition," I said. "Some people call it design." She ignored the jab, clasping her handbag like it was a weapon. "Do you know what you've done? The investors are spooked. Nathan's account access is frozen. You've humiliated this family." "Correction," I said. "Nathan humiliated me. I just provided lighting." Her lips tightened. "You think this is victory? You've burned everything. Even your reputation will be tainted by association." "Maybe," I said, "but I can rebuild mine. Can you?" That made her pause. For a heartbeat, the wind shifted, tugging at the silk scarf around her neck. She looked almost human then. Less queen, more woman caught in her own web. "Do you think I wanted this?" she said finally. Nathan's arrogance forced my hand. The investors were complaining about discrepancies. I filmed him to protect the family name. I tilted my head. "And planned to use it when it suited you." Her silence was answer enough. "You sent me that clip," I said. "You wanted me to do the dirty work." She didn't deny it. "You're clever, Lauren. You always were. I thought you'd see the opportunity." "Oh, I saw it," I said. "I just changed the target." Her expression cracked for the first time. "You wouldn't—" "I already did," I said softly. "The investors know about your vendor conflicts, Beverly. Landscaping, signage. Your fingerprints are all over the HOA contracts." She froze, the color draining from her cheeks. "Consider it an equal exchange," I continued. "You used my pain for leverage. I used your greed for closure." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she exhaled sharply and climbed back into her car. "You think this makes you righteous?" she muttered through the open window. "It just makes you ruthless." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'm honest about it." Her tires crunched against the gravel as she drove off. I stood there a while longer, watching the cars snake along the highway below. The noise was strangely comforting, steady, indifferent. Life moving on without needing permission. That afternoon, Dylan tried to call. I let it ring out, then checked his social feed out of curiosity. His profile picture was gone, his bio scrubbed. But the neighborhood group chat was another story. Someone had posted a photo of his car, the neon wrap still intact, captioned, "Who says branding isn't personal?" The comment section was savage. Later that day, a courier dropped off a letter from Pierce & Co.'s legal department. It was sterile and desperate. Request for non-disclosure compliance. In other words, Nathan's way of saying, "Please stop talking." I signed nothing. Instead, I called Ava Patel. "I thought you'd be busy cleaning up," I said when she answered. "Oh, we are," she replied evenly. "Robert asked me to reach out. The board appreciates your transparency. They'll be making structural changes." "How structural?" She hesitated, then said, "Nathan's position is under review. The firm will continue, but with a new leadership plan. Quiet transition." Quiet, I repeated. He won't like that. I imagine not, she said, but sometimes silence is the loudest statement. I smiled. Spoken like a designer. That evening, Nathan finally came home. I heard his car before I saw him, the nervous rev of an engine that didn't sound confident anymore. He walked in, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot, jacket half off his shoulder. You happy now? He said. I'm satisfied, I replied. Happiness is overrated. He laughed, a rough sound. You think you've won? You've ruined everything for both of us. Correction again, I said. I ruined your illusion. Mine was long gone. He paced the room like a caged animal. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Investors, Beverly, clients. You humiliated me. Oh, sweet irony, I said. Now you know how it feels. He stopped pacing. What do you want, Lauren? Nothing, I said. That's the part you'll never understand. You can't buy nothing. He stared at me, something bitter rising behind his eyes. You always were dramatic. I learned from the best. For a moment I thought he might shout again. Instead, he turned away, muttering something about leaving. I didn't stop him. When the door slammed, I felt the house exhale. But peace was temporary. The next day, Beverly's revenge came swiftly. A glossy envelope appeared in my mailbox, containing a single printed photo. Me, standing at the overlook, facing her car. On the back, a note in neat handwriting. Careful, Lauren. Optics matter. I laughed out loud. The woman couldn't help herself. So I went one step further. That evening, I met with a friend of mine, Maxine, a local event planner, who owed me a favor. We set up a little performance for the following weekend, a brand appreciation mixer at a downtown co-working space. The guest list, mostly local entrepreneurs, some investors, and a few curious neighbors. Nathan couldn't resist an audience, even a smaller one. He showed up right on time, smug in a freshly pressed suit. Dylan was there too, trying to blend in near the bar, sunglasses indoors, as if anonymity could save him. I took the small stage and tapped the microphone. Welcome, everyone. Tonight's theme is transparency, the beauty of clean design and honest branding. Nathan smirked from the crowd, arms crossed. Always on brand, Lauren. Oh, you'll like this one, I said. I brought samples. The screen behind me flickered to life, displaying 3 campaign mock-ups side by side. At first glance, identical. Then, with a single click, the metadata overlay appeared. Timestamps, authors, duplication indicators. A collective murmur filled the room. See, in design, I continued, patterns reveal everything, even when you try to hide them. Dylan shifted uncomfortably. Nathan's smirk vanished. Sometimes, I said softly, patterns show when something's been copied once too often. I clicked again, and the slide changed to a side-by-side comparison of the same banners used for the charity 5K and an earlier campaign. My initials glowed faintly in the corner. This is what happens when you mistake ownership for partnership, I said. The silence that followed was delicious. Nathan moved forward, whispering harshly, Turn that off, Lauren. I leaned toward the mic. That's my line. The lights flickered, and the room erupted in whispers. Dylan slipped out again. Nathan followed, face tight, movements jerky. I didn't stop them. I'd already arranged for Ava and Robert to receive a recording. Outside, the night air was crisp and electric. I walked to the parking lot, heels clicking against the pavement. Nathan's car was gone. Dylan's too. My phone buzzed. Ava's message. We received the footage. Effective tomorrow, Nathan's position is suspended. Board transition complete. I exhaled slowly, the tension finally dissolving. But the evening had one more surprise. When I reached home, a small envelope sat on my doorstep. Inside was a note on Beverly's stationery. We're even now. Don't contact me again. I smiled. Even was such a fragile word. By Sunday, Wisteria Grove was quieter. No more reporters, no gatherings, just trimmed lawns and wary glances. Nathan's car was still missing, and his nameplate had been removed from the agency's website. Beverly's HOA newsletter didn't mention me once, her version of surrender. I sat on my porch, coffee warm in my hand, sketchbook open on my lap. For the first time in months, I wasn't designing revenge. I was sketching, just colors, shapes, nothing sharp. But peace has layers too. Beneath mine, there was one last heartbeat of mischief. I pulled out my phone and opened the anonymous drive, the one labeled Textures, the folder with all the files, the videos, the truth. I hovered over the share button, then smiled and closed it. No need. The design was finished. Nathan, Beverly, Dylan, they'd already told my story for me. All I did was adjust the layout. And when I looked out at the perfect lawns of Wisteria Grove, I realized something simple and satisfying. I'd built this entire neighborhood into my masterpiece, and I didn't even need to sign my name. Monday began with the kind of deceptive calm that always comes before the final act. The sky was a clear, fragile blue, the lawns immaculate, the air faintly perfumed with the citrusy smell of Beverly's overused cleaner. Wisteria Grove looked normal again, but normal here was just costume work. Pressed smiles, polite waves, and tension tucked under manicured hedges. Nathan hadn't come home all weekend. His side of the closet still looked untouched, but his toothbrush was missing. That small absence felt like punctuation. Not an ending, just a pause before the final line. I made coffee, black, no sugar, and checked the local news feed. Pierce & Co. had issued a statement. Temporary leadership restructuring to improve transparency and client confidence. Translation: Nathan was gone. Quietly, efficiently, as Ava promised. It should have felt satisfying, but I wasn't done yet. There's a difference between watching someone fall and watching them realize they've hit the ground. At 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. This time, the message read, "We need to talk. Beverly's not letting it go." No signature, but I knew that clipped phrasing. Dylan. I almost laughed. Of course Beverly couldn't stand losing control. But I typed back anyway. Fine. The old construction site. Noon. The place was a half-finished luxury complex just outside the Grove, one Nathan had bragged about, branding into an empire last year. It had been abandoned after funding fell through. Hollow skeletons of houses surrounded by weeds and dust. The perfect place for a confrontation. Quiet, wide, nowhere to hide from the truth. When I arrived, the wind whipped through unfinished walls, carrying echoes that sounded almost like whispers. Dylan's car was already there, parked crookedly, dust settling on its hood. He stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, sunglasses on, even though the light was soft. "Lauren," he said when I approached, "you didn't waste time." "I never do," I replied. "What's Beverly planning?" He hesitated, studying me. "She's calling investors, trying to pin the leak on you. Says you accessed confidential files illegally." "Of course she does," I said. "She's allergic to accountability." "She has influence, Lauren. She could make this messy for you." "Messy?" I laughed quietly. "Dylan, I built order out of your messes. I know every crack in your perfect stories." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. I just need this to stop. You won, okay? Nathan's out, the firm's shaken, Beverly's furious. You've made your point. You think this was about points?" "Isn't it always?" he asked, with that half-smile men use when they think charm still works. I stepped closer. "Tell me something, Dylan. When you laughed at that dinner, when you joined in while Nathan mocked me, what was the punchline supposed to be?" He looked away, jaw tightening. It was a stupid moment. "Moments have weight," I said. "They settle in the air, they stay on recordings, they come back when you least expect." He didn't answer. The silence stretched. I could feel the wind shifting. a low hum across the metal scaffolding. Beverly won't win this, I said finally. She's bluffing. The HOA contracts alone are enough to bury her influence. And you'll be fine as long as you stay quiet. Quiet doesn't suit me, he said, almost smiling again. I turned, ready to leave. Then enjoy the noise. But before I reached my car, a silver SUV pulled up fast, gravel spitting behind it. Beverly climbed out, hair perfect, pearls gleaming like armor. She looked both furious and terrified. So this is where the schemer holds her meetings, she said, voice sharp. Good morning to you too, I replied. You think you can destroy everything my family built? I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just peeled off the wallpaper. She took a step closer. You're unstable. The investors will believe me. I'll tell them you forged everything, that you tampered with files. Careful, I said softly. You're almost confessing. Don't threaten me, Lauren. I smiled. That's not a threat. That's graphic design, alignment and proportion. You move one piece, everything shifts. Dylan stepped between us. Enough, both of you. This is getting out of hand. But Beverly wasn't listening. She pulled out her phone, waving it like proof of power. I recorded our talk last week, the one where you admitted hacking the system. I admitted using my own credentials, I corrected. That's not hacking. That's logging into a shared system I built. You should read your own bylaws before you bluff. For a second, she faltered. The phone trembled slightly in her hand. That recording won't save you, I continued. You think you're still directing this, but you're just reacting now. And you're sloppy when you react. Her eyes flashed. You self-righteous. I didn't let her finish. I reached into my tote and pulled out a small flash drive, holding it up like a talisman. Here's what you really need to worry about. This has every timestamp, every payment route, every vendor overlap tied to your HOA accounts. It's organized, color-coded, beautifully labeled. I could send it to every homeowner with one click. Beverly's lips parted, but no sound came. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. Wouldn't I said, stepping closer. You sent me that video of Nathan, hoping I'd take him down and spare you. You started this. I just finished it neatly. She looked like she might collapse. Instead, she straightened her back and hissed, You'll regret this, Lauren. People like you always do. I slipped the flash drive back into my bag. People like me learn. People like you repeat. Then I turned to Dylan. You should drive her home before she melts her mascara. He nodded numbly. Beverly shot me one last glare before storming back to her SUV. When they were gone, I stood there for a long moment, the wind tugging at my hair, dust swirling in lazy spirals. The half-built houses loomed around me like silent witnesses, empty frames, but strong. I like that metaphor. Back in my car, I didn't drive home right away. I took a detour through the city, watching the skyline rise and fade through the windshield. My phone buzzed with new messages. Claire again, probably, or one of the gossip threads. I ignored them. At a red light, I opened the textures drive one last time. The files shimmered there, perfect and final. My map of deceit, my design of downfall. I selected every folder, every screenshot, every proof, and deleted them. Not out of mercy, out of control. Because the real power wasn't in keeping receipts. It was in knowing I didn't need them anymore. When I reached home, the street was quiet. Beverly's curtains were closed. Dylan's car was gone. Nathan's side of the driveway was empty. Everything looked the same. Perfect symmetry, perfect silence. But underneath, the design had changed forever. I walked inside, placed my tote on the table, and looked around the house. Every room, every corner, still carried traces of him. Faint cologne, a tie forgotten behind a chair, the echo of old jokes. But now, those things belonged to the past tense. I poured wine, turned on the record player, and sat by the window. Outside, the sprinklers began again, the same rhythm as that night of the dinner. Steady, deliberate, cleansing. Across the street, a new car pulled into the vacant house's driveway. A moving van followed behind it. Fresh start for someone else. Wisteria Grove didn't stop for scandals. It just rearranged them. I watched the water arc across the lawns, catching the light like glass. The sound was almost like applause again. Softer, distant, earned. And as I sat there, alone but unshaken, I realized the story didn't need an epilogue. It had already reached its final frame. Balance restored, lies exposed, order remade. The wife who'd been the punchline had become the architect. The house of pretense had fallen, piece by piece, and in its place stood something sharper, truer. My design, my symmetry, my quiet revenge still echoing beneath the perfect lawns of Wisteria Grove. The sprinklers hissed once more, then stopped. The air went still. That's when I smiled. Show's over. Curtain down.